So if you want to get your phone or your browser to menti.com, we'll be ranking the recommendations to understand where the priorities are.
Hannah, I just started the recording.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, and we are now being recorded.
I should have got the Seinfeld reference on record.
Recreate the conversation. All right. I think we can go ahead and just do a quick round of introductions for everyone who's just on the line. I know we've met before, but just so we're aware of who's with us this evening, and then we will jump into the recommendations prioritization. So before we go into intros, I just up on the screen, you'll see what the priorities are or what the plan is for tonight's meeting. And it is really to take those recommendations that we were brainstorming at the end of the last meeting with LVPC and the working group and decide which are the highest priority recommendations and then have an opportunity to build those out utilizing the template that we have here that we'll be recreating in the Jamboard space, just so we can all collaboratively see it. So it's really about putting some meat to these ideas, really thinking about how they could function as we move into the next phase of the comp plan, which will be bringing this to the Planning Commission. So we'll talk more about that towards the end of the meeting in terms of next steps. But at this time, I just want to have everyone do quick round robin introductions. I'll just call off folks' names because I can see them on the participant list. So I'll start. My name's Hannah Clark. I'm tonight's facilitator. I'm with Michael Baker International, and I am a senior planner and have been working alongside the with South Whitehall to build out and conduct this working group process. So really thank you all for sticking with us and being part of this through our last 3 meetings. So with that, I'll ask Bill to introduce himself.
I'm Bill McNair, and I'm a member of the South Whitehall Township Planning Commission. I've been a resident of South Whitehall for about 40 years.
Thank you. Greg, do you want to go next?
Sure. Greg Adams. I'm the municipal planner here at South Whitehall Township, and I'm here tonight for my historical and South Whitehall expertise.
Thank you. And Chris Rabasco.
Hi, Chris Rabasco, planning associate, also with Michael Baker. I've been working with Hannah and township staff to help facilitate a lot of these meetings. So I've seen some of you before, and great to see everyone again.
Thank you. Robert.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Emanuel. I am a graduate planning student at Temple University and an intern for South Whitehall Township.
Thank you. And David, would you like to go next?
Yes. My name is David Burke. I'm a citizen, live in the Deerfield development area. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael, do you want to introduce yourself next?
Hey everyone, Mike Dravenstad. I'm a 30-year resident in the city of Allentown. I am chair of the board of the Delaware and Lehigh National Heritage Corridor, and I'm pretty much been attending these to advocate for the interconnectivity of trails and trail development in the area. So, and I know you have the mentee up and everything. I probably won't be participating. I'm not a South Whitehall Township taxpayer, so I have a voice, but not a paid voice. So you know where I'm coming from on trails, and we'll just leave it at that. I'll say I've also been really encouraged to hear the feedback from everyone throughout these about the need and desire for trails and the interconnectivity. It's consistent with what we heard in Allentown and elsewhere. So I want to say that as well. It's been very, very encouraging. So thank you.
Thank you for that. And Phil, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name is Phil Frenchak. I've been a resident of South Whitehall Township over 35 years.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks for being here. And finally, Scott.
Good evening, everyone. Scott Savette. My wife and I are township residents. We live over near the Parkland High School, and we've been living here since 2008.
Thank you so much. And yes, it looks like we've just been joined. Diane, sorry, I know you just got on. We're just doing introductions. Do you want to quickly introduce yourself, Diane?
Oh, sure. Hi. Sorry I'm late. Yes, I'm Diane Kelly. I am a South Whitehall Township Commissioner, and I'm also a member of the South Whitehall Township Planning Commission.
Wonderful. All right. Well, I believe I've gotten to everyone who's currently on the participant list I have. Did anyone not get a chance to introduce themselves and would like to do so? All right. If not, I am going to now direct us to our trustee Mentimeter presentation. And I know on the screen it is a little hard to read. We had, as a result of the discussion that occurred with the LVPC last time as we were brainstorming recommendations, from that brainstorm from the Jamboard that we utilized to collect these, we have 12 recommendations that we would like to ask you to take a few minutes and rank them in the order, with 1 being your highest priority and 12 being your lowest priority. I know it's a lot to go through. Hopefully it won't take too long to walk through it. But if you are having any difficulties or you have questions, let us know or just speak up. But in order to go through the prioritization, you should go to menti.com, which I dropped into the chat. It's menti.com. You can do that on your phone or on your browser. And the code to access this poll is 40410354. You put that in, you'll get a screen that has these recommendations, and I will ask you to rank them from 1 to 12. And as you're going through that, I can just quickly read off what we have, and if there are any questions, please feel free to speak up or again drop any thoughts into the chat. So the recommendations that we came up with from the last meeting, and these again are in no particular order right now. It's just the order that we inputted them. So hopefully if you're able to access menti.com and put in the code, you'll be able to give us your thoughts. But we have PennDOT Local Assistance, Local Technical Assistance Program, or LTAP. Number 2, or the second one, increase citizen education around transportation. 3rd, identify safety areas and high crash areas to address. 4, discuss multi-municipal planning and benefit to the township. 5, prepare and get our projects on the tip. 6, create and implement a capital improvements plan. 7, traffic impact fees related to a serious consideration of an Act 209 study. I have put those together. So traffic impact fees and Act 209 are together here. 8, create a transportation plan for the township, roads and trails. 9, more frequent updates to the comp plan. 10, official map update to leverage funding and create a vision. 11, encourage more transportation connectivity enhancements. And 12, amend the zoning map so traffic-related intensity of permitted uses is appropriate to existing and planned transportation network. So I know it's a lot to consider. Are folks, and you can just unmute yourself or drop it in the chat, are you able to access Menti and put in the code?
Yep.
Awesome. So we'll give you guys a little time to do that. And as you're going through, if you do have any questions or need clarification or want to better understand some of the things that are up here, just again, shout out or drop your question in the chat. Right. 1. Great. All right, we have 5 inputs so far. And I do just want to share, if anyone is finishing up their rankings or still going through it, the way we want to utilize this understanding of where priorities are is to advance and begin, from the first priority and start going down the list to build out the different recommendations. So we will, if we're efficient, and I know this group is really good at, discussion and moving through things, we might be able to get to all 12. But we'll start with the number 1 and go from there onwards as we talk through what these recommendations could look like for South Whitehall. So right now we have 6 folks who have provided their input, and right now our top 3 are number 1, create a transportation plan for the township, roads and trails. 2, amend zoning map so traffic related intensity of permitted uses is appropriate. Number 3, identify safety areas and high crash areas to address. We have 7 now, and that changed some things at the bottom, but it looks like right now we're maintaining our number 1 as create a transportation plan for the township. Has everyone who wanted to participate been able to participate, or is anyone having trouble? I'm going to take that as we're good in terms of input, but I think I want to take a quick pause to be able to take in what's up here and have folks share any of their thoughts about the recommendations, maybe why you put one above the other, and just give you a chance to kind of speak to your ranking if you would like. So it's an open floor. Feel free to unmute yourself and speak up. Any insights or any feedback on where we've landed in the prioritization? If it's surprising, if it reflects, where we've been in our discussions. All right, so we're all pretty much in agreement that this resonates and makes sense for everyone here. And I guess just from the staff perspective, Greg, do you want to give any of your kind of framing thoughts as we go into building out the recommendations?
I'm still digesting at this point. I mean, it looks good. I have no issues with either the ranking or the recommendations at all. They're all good recommendations.
Great. Well, it seems like these are all really strong recommendations, so it's probably wise for us to move into building them out. And what I'm going to do is just take a quick screenshot of this so I can, if I can find my screenshot, there we go. So we can have this to quickly refer back to as we are moving through the next step. So with this, Chris, my colleague Chris, is going to take us to the Google Jamboard, and he will be our fearless Jamboard scribe. So he's going to take our ideas and take what we start developing for the recommendations and put them up there using that recommendation template. So we can definitely refer back to this list. We have it saved, we can bring it up. I'm gonna go to the Jamboard link now on my screen.
I just dropped it into the chat.
Yes, and Chris just dropped the link into the chat. So if you would like to have the opportunity to contribute yourself to the Jamboard, please feel free to click on that link. If you'd prefer for Chris to be the scribe and capture your thoughts as we're having a discussion, he is an expert at fast typing and moving things around. So Chris, are you good?
Yep, I'm all ready.
All right. So I think, you know, what we could do, and this might be the easiest way, is to quickly save our transportation recommendations, and we can add that as a image here. Or Chris, do you think you could add that, the transportation recommendations from Mentimeter?
Sure, to page 1 here.
Yes, yeah, just so we can maybe refer back to it. Anyway, so, but we'll go and start thinking through the first one, which, and Chris, I'll support as you're getting that up there. I'll get us ready for the first recommendation template. So if everyone is ready to go, we'll start with create a transportation plan for the township, roads and trails, and Chris already expertly put it in there. So really what we want to do now is invite everyone here. You can, as we're going through each category, you can add your post-it yourself, or again, just speak up, put it in the chat, and Chris or myself will record it where it should go. So I think if someone wants to start out or has some thoughts on what would be some of the key goals for creating a transportation plan for the township. And if also, I think if you have some thoughts about what does this transportation look like in relation, transportation plan look like in relationship to the comprehensive plan, to other documents of the township, that would be great to hear as well. So any initial thoughts here about the key goals? And again, this is definitely meant to be a discussion. So please just feel free to speak up. I think that might be the easiest way for us to capture everyone's thoughts here this evening.
I'll give one. This is Bill. Prioritization of the projects to apply for funding.
That's great. So definitely a way to help us understand where the township is at when it comes to the various transportation planning and transportation infrastructure. Other goals of having a transportation plan, or other ways, you know, how this could be utilized in terms of what it will do for the township. And Chris, is that so worked great. So sorry. Understand high traffic areas for the duration of the plan, work to balance future plan growth with appropriate future traffic capabilities. And I do just want to highlight here that something I think that's happened in some of our other groups as we've been building out recommendations is you start to see, as you're getting through the goals and the actions, where there's some alignment between recommendations. So I know we also have, I think the second recommendation is about understanding how zoning can be a tool in helping to think about growth and planned growth and capacity. So it's great to see how these are just at this very beginning point relating to one another. So for the any other goals folks want to add? And Bill, I think, Chris, did you get a chance to add bills, or should I do that? My apologies, it wasn't clear. Chris, I think you're muted. I'm so sorry.
Oh, I was saying, I'm still putting the picture in, like, so
Okay.
I'll be done in like 10 seconds.
No problem. Bill, can you just repeat your comment so I can capture it here?
It was to prioritize our projects, our projects to put them in line for funding, applying for funding.
Wonderful, thank you. And my apologies about that. Awesome, provide. So we have at least 5 goals here, which I think we can now transition. Okay, and great. Someone moved that to action. So perfect. So prioritize our projects, put them in line for transportation funding as a goal. I did place the look to other local municipalities who may have had success with this to gather possible ideas and guidance. I see that as a goal. Work to balance future plan growth, understand high traffic areas. So it looks like we're already getting some actions up here. So let's jump over there. So in terms of key actions, so far we have provide transportation options beyond cars as part of a transportation plan, inventory non-automotive transportation, and make sure to coordinate trail development with the link trail, which is the regional trail system. Other actions that feel important to call out here. Looks like calculate financial impact of long-range transportation needs. If whoever added that, feel free to add it to goals or actions. That looks great. Other people have thoughts that you want to shout out, and we'll record them for you in terms of action. Or any thoughts about what we have up here as well. Again, great to have a discussion with the group as well.
Yes, Dave Burke, comment, coordinate zoning with road capacity and infrastructure.
Great. Awesome. And in terms of this action, other action we just got up here, ask PennDOT for their planning assistance. I think that's a perfect way for us to leverage some of the existing resources we know are out there and that we heard about in our meeting with LVPC. And just a clarifying point, Mr. Burke, did you want the coordinate zoning with road capacity and infrastructure to be a goal or an action?
Actually, it could be both.
Yes.
Well, first you have to do the coordination as a goal, and it's an action as well. Would you agree?
To me, that makes sense. I almost see it as kind of straddling the line between goal and action.
Right.
And I think having it as a goal and then what are the tools to make it a reality, maybe unpacking it a bit in the action set.
I think you could make the goal statement, have zoning and road capacity and infrastructure be coordinated as the goal, and then the action is to actually do the coordination.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Other comments or thoughts about actions or how to move the goals into an action? Whether they're up here, whether you want to add some additional thoughts.
Well, I felt that the official map both could be informed by the transportation plan and inform the transportation plan. I see those as kind of a circular relationship. So obviously you can look at projects you want to do, put them on the official map, and the transportation plan can suggest projects that should be on the official map. So they've kind of got this circular relationship.
That's a great point, Greg. And understanding how that piece fits in as a tool, but then also, like you said, to set a vision. I guess just a clarifying question for the group, and I know we might have some varying opinions on this, is the transportation plan in your mind a separate document that exists on its own as a standalone document for the township, or is it put into something else? Put in, I mean, we know we have a transportation chapter with the comprehensive plan. I'm not saying that this is what is everyone's referring to, but are there some thoughts about that from working group members as to where this type of plan fits within township administration? And Greg, if in terms of you as staff, if you have any thoughts about it.
Yeah, I would think that would be its own, it would be its own standalone plan. Then we have something that is specifically for transportation. It can certainly interlock with other things because as Dave Burke said, you want that to work with zoning and vice versa. Obviously, a transportation plan can then interact with any capital improvements plan. It can be taken to PennDOT for funding. I mean, there's a whole slew of things that you can do once you have a separate transportation plan available to you. So I think it's a standalone.
I agree with that.
Thank you. Others in agreement?
I guess my question would be, can it be a standalone document as well as an integral part of the comp plan, because it is one and the same?
I would think my preference would be no. The comp plan tends to be a very broad brush that covers a lot of general aspects. This would be considered a direct result of the recommendations coming out of the comp plan, much like updating the zoning ordinance would be a result of recommendations coming out of the comp plan. So I would look at it as not part of the comp plan, but a direct result of the comp plan.
So my question, I wasn't here when the last comp plan was accomplished, and is there a section in our previous comp plan that speaks to transportation plans like this that we're speaking of?
Yes.
Okay,
Well,
so
there's a section on but is there a separate plan? Maybe not.
well,
I
not
don't believe there is.
it's worked into it. So I certainly think that there's, I mean, you can't talk about future growth without talking about transportation. They're so aligned to do
Right.
one without the other. We may end up going down an avenue that we don't want to go down.
Well, and that's true, but remember, a comp plan is not for the nuts and bolts details. It is the overarching concepts and policies of how you want the township to develop. So the comp plan will dictate in broad terms, and then you generate or amend the existing documents from that. Because quite frankly, if we include it as part of the comp plan, you're probably adding another year or more before you adopt the comp plan, because you then have to generate a transportation plan to put into it.
Is there a way to do a modified transportation plan to include in the comp plan and do an extended study tandem that might take longer?
I guess there is, but it all depends on the level of detail you want to include in the comp plan. And that's why we generally say the comp plan is a broad brush. And that will then inform what else the township has to do to make their regulations consistent with the comp plan.
There was a fair amount of detail in the last comp plan. I'm just looking at, there's a list of probably 15 to 20 specific projects that are mentioned on page 7, 9. And they're shown on the map too, as, you know, things that needed to be extended or connected or fixed.
I would like to see some consistency with the former plan so that we do include at least part this transportation study into it.
I agree. There's a lot of things on that plan that they may not have been done. Something that's come to light here, I think, with this discussions we've had on this group is that funding is not always going to be easy to be had, and that's going to be a key with all these. And it gets to how do we turn our zoning around to not zone for something that we can't get to?
Correct.
So and I think it's obviously an ongoing consideration and discussion, and in the context of what we're doing tonight and how I think understand it at a high level is it's very important to put into the comprehensive plan the need for a more detailed, more, potentially a standalone study, but also recognizing if and how maybe aspects of what would frame the transportation plan could be incorporated into this update. And we can definitely keep that in mind. And also, if you want to, I think we're putting some of our thoughts on the side here on the Jamboard just to make sure we don't lose those items and understand that they'll be carried forward with the discussion. I do want to move us, just because I know we have a lot of recommendations to go through. In terms of stakeholders, who would be the lead for a transportation plan for the township? This would be the lead or the champion. Who's really going to push it forward? And there, again, all of this is ideas and brainstorming, so there's no right or wrong answer. We can have multiple thoughts and put them down here, and we'll refine them as the process moves forward.
Well, I would think the community development department would be the driver, or the point person.
Well, we certainly could. Public Works is also, because they're the ones who are maintaining the roads. Obviously, I think the township engineer would have a strong role because they do a lot of the engineering and have the experience with the road network as it was built over the past 70 years. So all three of them are good candidates.
Agreed.
Sorry, Jane, did you want to add something to that?
No, I agree with Greg. I meant that community development would be the point person, but yes, absolutely. Public Works and our township engineer have very valuable information to come alongside and join in this.
Great. Any other thoughts about a lead or a champion for this work, or folks in general agreement this group makes sense? In terms of partners, who would be the necessary partners for this to be a successful recommendation and action for the plan?
Well, I would recommend PennDOT. LVPC has a lot of good information. Both of them are good outside agencies that would make good partners.
How about neighboring townships?
Potentially.
So we have PennDOT, LVPC, neighboring townships, the Link Trail Network for trails. We've, and I think, Bill, I don't know if you'd like to expand upon any more about how you see the neighboring townships as being partners, or if there's a specific partnership role you would envision.
Just looking, it may be specific. There's I think just connecting, where our roads are important, where there's, what they're, how to coordinate with their plans. A specific one in my mind is getting some of the warehouse traffic onto Tillman Street from Crackersport Road could go through Upper Macungie Township, for example.
Great. That's really helpful. Any other thoughts or just ideas to throw out there in terms of partners? If not, Diane, did you want to? Sorry, you're lighting up blue, so I'm calling on you.
Oh, I don't know why I am. I'm not doing anything.
No problem. I'm going to move us to potential funding sources, just because I know we got a lot to get through. Funding sources.
PennDOT.
PennDOT.
Great. Consensus.
I guess what's the gas tax? What's that called? The
Liquid fuels.
liquid fuels.
Great. And yes, and a lot of these are going to be the beginning of our ideas, but please feel free to keep, there are other funding resources you want to call out here. Feel free to keep adding them. I guess.
Probably investigate if the state has any grant money available to create a township transportation plan.
Yep. And I think this would fall under potentially a DCD or, PennDOT obviously has some, but there definitely are some, especially with the match programs. Okay, so where does this fall in terms of the implementation of the comprehensive plan? Is it near term, midterm, long term? And just so we're at a general basis for kind of on the same page, because the comp plan is a 10-year time span, we are thinking near term would be the first 1 to 3 years, midterm would be 3 to 5-ish, and then long term would be 5+.
I almost want to say all of them, but I would put it, I think transportation is what controls our plan to a large extent. The more I've learned from this process we've been going through, I think it's a near term.
I would agree on that.
If the goal here is the creation of the plan, I agree, it's near term, but it should certainly have elements of midterm and long term.
No argument.
Yep.
I would agree with all the comments so far.
Great, and we did get an addition from the chat. Grants for ADA from funding, grants for ADA that can be used for sidewalks and trails. I just put that up there. And those are important, I think, very good points for the actual, what the plan covers, and then when you want to see it occur so that it can be a foundation moving forward. Yep, go ahead.
There's another source could be funding is developers. I don't know if that's in there or not yet, but
I think, yeah, developers.
Okay, it's there. Never mind.
Discussed there, or was there.
Okay.
But no, it's good, very important. And I would imagine they could be in various capacities here. They're funding, but they're also partnering. All right, so how will we know if this plan is successful? How will we know if this recommendation is successful? What are some metrics for success that come to mind for you?
Getting our projects on the tip.
Great. Yes, know that. LDPC was quite clear. And I know that's been a very big point of conversation. So other thoughts on how we measure success of this recommendation?
Well, obviously the creation of the plan itself.
Right, as a deliverable.
Yeah.
Yep. Also seeing here, if in 30 years, all major South Whitehall roads are not rated H, one of our, the modeling that was done by Keystone. Any other pieces of, in terms of measures of success that folks want to add before we move to the next section?
Citizen satisfaction that development is supported by the infrastructure or infrastructure plans.
Great. Citizen satisfaction support that is supportive of the infrastructure in the plan. Sorry, there was a little background noise. My
I'm
apologies.
sorry, citizen satisfaction that the planned developments are supported by the existing infrastructure or planned infrastructure.
Got it. Wonderful. Well, before we move on to our next recommendation, are there any additional thoughts or comments folks want to put for this recommendation? I think obviously there's a lot here, and I think it makes a lot of sense why this was prioritized as the first recommendation for us to address. All right, so we're going to move to the recommendation of amend the zoning map. So traffic related intensity of permitted uses is appropriate to existing and planned transportation network. So definitely seeing maybe some tie-in to the previous recommendation in understanding and planning for the future, but I think it's very makes a lot of sense. This would also be a standalone recommendation. So in regards to amending the zoning map for traffic related intensity of permitted uses and how that relates to the existing and planned transportation network. Sorry, it's a mouthful. What are some of the goals that folks want to call out here for this recommendation? Could we, I'm sorry I'm not trying to be a heavy-handed facilitator, but could one of the goals be intensity of permitted uses is appropriate to existing and planned transportation network?
I think, yeah.
Sounds good.
I think the recommendation is the goal in and of itself.
Would folks be comfortable if we kind of took some of the language from the recommendation and put that into the goal area? There obviously can be more than one goal for this. Other thoughts around goals, or is that that covers it for this one for goals? And if it does, what would be the actions that you want to bring in to achieve this goal through zoning? Or what are the tools that come to mind? And I know we have members of the Planning Commission on here who maybe deal with some of these questions at different times, the projects that come forward, but also I think throw out any idea, because this is very much a brainstorm.
I would think you would need to get kind of two inventories. One is the available capacity of our individual roads and intersections, and then the current usage on those. So we could see which roads and intersections have capacity for growth and which are currently don't have capacity for, additional traffic. And that will inform then how we amend the zoning.
Right.
Great. Yeah, I think that's a very much a baseline understanding here.
Isn't that like a proactive traffic study of the areas involved that you're looking at for zoning changes?
Pretty much, yes.
So that there's no gotchas that come out of it?
Yeah.
That's the hope.
Yeah, that's where we are now.
Right.
That's Other actions to tie into this recommendation or to meet this goal?
Yeah, how about coordination with adjoining municipalities on large developments? And I'm especially talking about warehouses. I mean, north of us in Schnecksville, they just built, 1.3 million square feet of warehouses that are going in operation. That's probably 700 trucks a day. And we got 500 trucks a day that'll come out of Ridgeview at 309. So 309 is going to have a truck a minute going down it. We'll head to 22 or whatever. It's ludicrous. It's a safety problem. Sorry to get on a soapbox, but that's the reality.
Thank you for sharing that thought. And I think it, as again, just seeing kind of what recommendations are also coming up, some of the suggestions around multi-municipal planning or that application or other aspects seem to layer in, not saying that's the obvious next step here by any means, but any other actions folks want to highlight when it comes to reaching the goal of intensity of use with our existing and planned transportation network? Other ways to think or to assess, I guess.
I think it's important that we not only look kind of down the road, but in the short term, because there are some plans afoot for some large development in the township, and we want to make sure we don't miss that. Like what am I trying to say here? In terms of zoning, obviously, it is what it is today, and there are developments that are happening today or in the near future. We want to make sure that we're aware of those and take those into account, because they're not built yet, but they will be soon. And we don't want them to kind of fall between the cracks when we do this evaluation. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, definitely makes sense. And you can review the note we made here, but I think I think about phases of plans or the timelines we're looking at. It's not just those far down the road. It includes near term. All right, should any other additions or thoughts in terms of actions or additional goals that may have popped into your head? If not, or if there's nothing immediate, in terms of stakeholders, who is leading this work of amending the zoning?
Greg.
That's Greg.
And the planning commission.
And planning commission. Yep.
There's something staff and planning commission.
I would think township engineer. They have, once again, a lot of experience and knowledge with regard to the road system and how much it's being used. And I think we could probably get a lot of traffic data from PennDOT and LVPC as well.
Do you see PennDOT and LVPC as more partners if they're more data, or would
Yeah,
they
partners.
Okay. So under partners, we PennDOT, LVPC. Other partners that come to mind for this particular goal, or excuse me, recommendation?
Again, with Dave's comment, I think neighboring municipalities.
Right.
Great. All right. So in terms of funding, if not all of these, I know this is a slightly administrative recommendation to a certain extent, but where would the funding, even if it's just from the budget, it's helpful to identify where it's coming from.
Yeah, I would definitely say a lot of this would come out of the township budget.
Like budget line item. Anyone else reactions or thoughts to that or think otherwise?
I guess there could be some, I don't know if we can get grants for this or PennDOT.
We can look.
Always good to put it down. I mean, you can get funding for zoning and comprehensive plan updates from DCD, various municipal grants they have for municipalities. In terms of implementation, where does this fall on the near, mid, long-term timeline? Is there,
Yeah.
I mean, and also mid, Al, is that you or Dave?
Me.
You're talking about timing?
So yes, so when we think about implementation, when it comes to this being a comprehensive plan recommendation and it being implemented, is it happening in the near term, within the first 3 years, within midterm, 3 to 5 years, or is it a longer term, 5+ year?
It's got to be now, right?
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's now, but it also has to be after the transportation network plan has to be done first. But as soon as possible, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, some of each.
What do you mean by, do you want to expand upon that, Al?
No, I mean, I think you've got to have the short term as well as the longer term, and they need to kind of fit together. I mean, some of these things we may ultimately be on the hook for next year, 2 years down the road.
Mm-hmm.
It depends somewhat on the willingness of the developer to do stuff off site. Good luck in some cases.
Great. Any other thoughts about where this falls along implementation or wanting to expand? All right, so how will we know if this is successful? What's some ways of measuring success?
Zero traffic jams in the township.
Yeah, fewer traffic jams. I agree.
Citizen acceptance that development plans are reasonable.
What was the second word, Dave? Citizen.
Citizens acceptance that development plans are reasonable.
Okay.
Maybe reasonable is the wrong word, but I think you know what I'm getting at.
And
Yeah.
this is all language that will likely be workshopped to a certain extent. So feel free to just say whatever comes to mind. Any other measures of success folks want to throw out there for this recommendation?
Safe roads and intersections.
Great. All right, so it seems like you've paved the way, Dave, for us to the next one, where we have identified safety areas and high crash areas to address. And again, I know, and this is probably something that will just come up in conversation naturally, but feel free as we're walking through each recommendation, if you can always tie it or say, maybe we should merge this if there's some overlap or potential for synergies of recommendations. So not saying it has this one by any means, but just to keep in mind as we move forward. So when it comes to identifying safety areas and high crash areas, what are some of the goals of doing this for the township or for this recommendation?
Got to inventory the hazard areas.
Would you see that as a goal or an action in terms of the inventory?
Action.
Okay, but that's an action, I guess.
Right. And it can obviously, if you want it to be in the goals, it should definitely be there, and we can have a one in the action side as well.
Well, the goal would be to eliminate the hazard areas, right?
Yeah.
Eliminate hazard areas. Yep. Any other goals that pop to mind here or are top of mind for folks?
Well, do we want a more broad goal here? I mean, to minimize injury and property loss?
Yeah, we should definitely put that down. Great.
Another goal is pedestrian safety.
Mhm.
We have many developments that don't have any sidewalks. And people actually push carriages in the streets, jog in the streets. And in some cases, we're overloading the streets with the local streets with traffic.
All right, for everyone that I just, there we go. My apologies for technical issues. So pedestrian safety, Chris, were you able to get some of that, or do you want me to take down some of the additional goals?
Yeah, I can put them in.
Great.
I got a little distracted.
Sorry, I did something weird. Not sure what it was. All right. So to move to, what are some of the actions that would be key for these goals? So we have.
It would be a capital improvement plan to implement the safety strategy.
Great, thank you. Other thoughts on key actions? Any other, I know the discussion around pedestrian safety specifically, are there any, I think both of the actions up there, do you speak to that? Is there anything specific to pedestrian safety folks would like to see in terms of actions?
No different waiver of sidewalks and.
Great. Now let's come up across multiple groups in this regard. Any other thoughts around actions or things you want to add? All right, who would lead this work in the township, or who's the champion in the township?
Obviously the leaders, the board of commissioners, highest priority is the safety of the community.
All right, so we're seeing this fall within the board of commissioners. Are they the sole leader, or are they sharing the leadership with any other entities?
I think they're the leader, but they have to set the, set the leadership. They don't do the work.
Yeah, so if they lead, does that then go to the folks doing the work would be the partners? And And if, or just, I mean, we don't have to call them partners in every aspect, but who would be responsible for moving this forward once the vision is set?
Well, for this one, you're looking at the police department.
Safety?
Yep, public safety. They have a lot of the data on where the crash areas are.
Township engineer.
Township engineer could do this.
Like the
Possibly.
township sorry, go ahead.
Is it worth canvassing the township residents? Because there might be an area that somebody thinks is unsafe, but might not have a high likelihood, high incidence of, crashes or pedestrian strikes, just because people don't go there because it's unsafe.
Yeah, so definitely the residents understanding, and also, you have data, but how do you also understand if that data, what that data is telling you, if it's really playing out in the community?
I had to step away for a moment. I'm hearing the end of this conversation, and I was wondering, to piggyback on the survey of the residents, certainly working in tandem with the South Whitehall Police Department to get their statistics on whether it's crashes or frequent speeding, that type of thing, frequent congested areas. There's a lot we could probably learn from them since they're throughout the township on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Great. So in terms of funding, where does the funding fall for this type of activity?
Township budget and grants.
Yep.
Makes sense. Township budget and grants. Any additional thoughts on funding? In terms of the implementation timeline, is this a near, mid, long term? And it also, I think, taking into account what groundwork needs to be laid. But I think, obviously, if it's a high priority here, or if more time's needed for a study or for data collection.
Well, it's obviously near term to at least get the ball rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously identifying the areas will be easy, addressing them will be longer and harder. So
Yeah, very true. And how will, what are, does someone want to speak up?
I was just gonna say, it's also township roads versus state routes, so there's lots of different factors that can delay stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very true. Important consideration across the board. In terms of measures of success, what comes to mind for folks?
Statistics.
yeah.
Yeah.
If you look at the goals,
It's 0 accidents and
zero
injuries.
accidents, 0 injuries.
It keeps reminding me of that Vision Zero policy of 0 deaths and 0 significant injuries. So that's like the overall arching thing.
Yes, that's definitely what came to mind for me too in this regard. Right.
Well, in terms of a deliverable,
The first thing you have to do, and maybe we already have it, is create a measurement system. Maybe we already have it, I don't know. But for each of those categories. Because if you don't know where you are, you don't know whether you're improving or not.
True. Scott, did you want to add something as well?
Yeah, so digging into the crash fatality injury data and statistics, I think having a graphical representation, because the township has expertise in GIS, I think that would be a deliverable from this.
That's a great point. And a communications tool to a certain extent as well as visualizing. Wonderful. I'm going to move us to the next one unless there's any additional thoughts here. Obviously, we're kind of hitting the surface on each of these. So our next recommendation that we had in terms of the priorities was discuss multi-municipal planning and benefits to township. So what would be some of the goals? And if any folks have questions about multi-municipal planning, we can also just briefly touch on what that looks like.
What is this recommendation? I can't read it on the.
I can't either.
So sorry, the font colors are not ideal. The recommendation is discuss multi-municipal planning and benefits to township. So this recommendation is focused on exploring concepts around multi-municipal planning. Does anyone have questions or, sorry, go ahead.
A minute.
So in terms of this thank you. In terms of this, go ahead.
I'm sorry. The key goal is coordinate activities in terms of increased traffic due to development.
Okay. Yep. One. So coordination of activities. I mean, I think municipal planning as a concept brings in multiple layers of ways it's utilized, including you can you can share uses, so you don't have to accommodate every use in your community if you were to have a multi-municipal plan, though that is usually through the comprehensive planning process. In terms of transportation, are folks kind of centering around this goal of coordinating activities of increased traffic? Other ways that folks see a goal around multi-municipal planning and transportation in the township? So coordinations are top. What would be some of the actions to facilitate the coordination of activities and mitigate some of the impacts of traffic due to development?
I would think the initial thing is to approach all of our neighboring municipalities to determine if they're interested and get them to sign on to a multi-municipal plan. That's your first start.
Greg, would we also coordinate that with LVPC, or do we do that on our own prior to?
I would think that's something that we would accomplish. I mean, it would be nice. I'm sure LVPC would be more than happy to back us on this. But I think for the most part, one of the municipalities has to basically be the start, be the poster child, be the leader, with the LVPC backing them. So I would definitely think that that's something we should talk to the LVPC about and then take the lead.
Great idea. I like that. Greg, thank you.
PennDOT would be another partner in this, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Great. So any other actions that folks want to highlight here? Greg pointed out I think, foundational aspect. Anything else that rises to the top for actions? And so I guess building on the discussion around having a leader in the municipalities for the question of who leads in this situation of multi-municipal planning, where do you guys see the leadership role, or who plays that leadership role?
I would think that's commissioners. And then they can direct.
Yep.
They can direct staff as needed, but that's got to start at the top.
Are others in agreement with that?
Yep.
I think that's good.
Yes.
And so, in terms of funding for such an effort, thoughts of where that would come from?
Township budget.
Township budget. I know there's also grant opportunities for multi-municipal plans.
Great. Yeah.
Excellent. Excellent.
Wonderful. And when we think about implementation, where is this falling in the timeline for comp plan implementation?
I would say near term.
I would agree.
Yep. And then how do we measure success with this recommendation?
If all municipalities involved adopt it.
Makes sense? Any other thoughts on measures of success? Great. Are folks good to move on to the next one, or is there any additional thoughts to add around this one? And don't mean to be rushing things. I just know we have a lot to get through and not the most time in the world.
Let's keep moving.
Keep moving. All right. So our next one is traffic impact fees, which is associated with an Act 209 study, at least in this recommendation. And if anyone feels that they should be separated, please feel free to speak up, and we'll definitely, we can adjust. So what would some of the goals be of implementing or adopting traffic impact fees, or maybe the first step of the Act 209 study?
It's to get additional sources of funding for roads.
Well, that's what it's for. But if you're doing a serious consideration of the study, you probably want to actually study whether it's worthwhile first, and then come to the decision of whether we implement or not implement.
Okay, so some layers here. So in terms of considering the study, assess if it's worth it. And then I think recognizing that one of the results would be, or one of the goals would be getting additional funding, even if that comes as a later aspect of this. Other goals that folks want to highlight when it comes to this recommendation? And I do understand it's kind of a two-part, so if we can pull it apart a bit if that's better.
Just to piggyback, I think education is a goal, because I think the more that we as a township better understand, to piggyback off Greg's comment, what are the options for us as a township? What do we stand to gain? What are the not so positive sides to this? So I don't know, would one of the goals be to possibly speak to maybe a neighboring township that has already implemented it, to see what their assessment is of it, and then also work with the LVPC, because I know that they have an awful lot of information on this topic as well.
I think those are great ideas. I think that probably talking to a number of townships who have implemented these is good, because sometimes what you think will happen doesn't, and it's good to talk to the people who actually have experience. So I think that's a great idea.
Thank you. Yeah, I was thinking even long-term, even someone who's had it maybe 5, 10 years, just from a, you know, a larger perspective to get an on-the-ground assessment.
Great.
Question for Greg. Do any of the local townships do this at this point in time?
I'm not aware of any of the immediate townships who have an Act 209 plan. I do know there's a number of them in the state, but I don't know of anybody immediately in our vicinity.
Thank you.
And so in terms of thinking about the actions, and I think this may be one where the goals and the actions start to merge together a little bit, but are there specific actions folks want to call out? I think understanding the landscape of those who have Act 209 plans is a great action. Some of the ones in the goals can probably both be an action and a goal. Comes to education and understanding best practices. Other thoughts around actions here? If not, I'm going to ask who leads. Is this something that squarely falls on the shoulders of the BOC, or how do we see the impetus of this being started? And it doesn't have to be, I mean, even if there's a I mean, obviously this is referring to a state process that has some clear parameters. I guess if there's any clear leadership, I would imagine the BOC probably needs to be heavily involved. So we probably want to put them up there as a leader, if folks agree with that. Any other leaders or any others who should be a lead in this space? And what about partners with this type of work, or with the study? And I mean, I think I heard LVPC mentioned as how they help, you know, understand what this looks like in the context of different municipalities. Not being 100% familiar with it, at least all the details, I wonder if local legislators would be useful in this space. I think residents probably you wanted, if that seems, does that make sense to folks?
I think.
All right, funding for funding. Or funding for the study, where would that be coming from? It can be anything. Greg, are you aware of a typical practice of how these get funded? Or if anyone is aware of the process in that regard. And definitely leave it blank for now. In terms of implementation, near, mid, long term, where does this fall in the 10-year timeline?
They're all important, but I would say this one's going to take some time to do.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would say mid to long term.
That makes sense, particularly understanding the landscape for getting something like this started. What about measures of success? Is anything coming to mind for how you see this is what would make this recommendation successful in the context?
Money.
Money?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I get it. So with us having less than 10 minutes left of our meeting, I wanted to quickly switch over and see if folks want to prioritize which recommendations we might want to touch upon when we're all still together. So we've gotten through the 5th recommendation, so we still have everything from 6 to 12. So prepare and get projects on the tip, more frequent updates to comp plan, encourage more transportation connections, connectivity enhancements, official map, capital improvements plan, local technical assistance program, education. I think some of these things have been woven into our discussion, but anyone want to shout out one you want to address before our time is up at 6:45?
Official map.
Official map.
I quite frankly think a number of these support each other. So, developing the transportation plan, which is fed by, finding the high hazard areas, using the official map, getting stuff for the tip. They all kind of support each other. So stuff like that is always good to keep, keep at the top of our minds and top of the recommendations. So that's kind of my thoughts on that.
Okay.
Agree, and I think the conversation itself has added some structure and ideas to some of the other recommendations we maybe didn't get to discuss as much. So in terms of key goals for the official map update, in the recommendation itself, it says to leverage funding and create a vision. Would those be a potential goal?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have, does that seem to cover the gambit of goals for what the official map can do, or does anyone want to throw out other goals in this regard?
I'd say community consensus.
Mm-hmm. Got it already?
Hannah, can you repeat the first one? Sorry.
The first one, no problem. We're just taking the actual title of it and to leverage funding and create a vision. Has the other goals that folks want to throw out there? Other ways we can think about the official map being used, Greg, or I don't know, from a staff perspective.
Well, basically, I think that's great because once you have that consensus of what the community goals are, then you put in the official map the things that you want to get out of development in the future. Anything from, intersection improvements to a new trail, to a new park, to a new school. All of that is what you would put in the official map. And then when those areas come up for development, the township now has a tool to get that.
That's great, Greg. And I went a little rogue and just typed that in there so we can remember. So I think if we want to move to actions, and one of the things is what specifically maybe is not on the official map now, or again, items that you'd want to see added on there that become actions of the official map update. And if I can be bold, I know the Jordan Creek Greenway is not currently on the official map. So.
Well, actually it is.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yep.
To the full extent, we were having this discussion in resource protection. So that's
right. Not to the full extent, but we have a band, an area within the Jordan Creek, what we thought would be the possible areas that it could go. And every property in there is within that band. So if something comes up on those properties, the discussion is brought forward. So that's from township border to border, east to west.
Wonderful.
But basically, like I said, you can get anything in there. So if you want a community facility, if you want utilities, if you want, for example, here, maybe we can go back and look at the 2009 comp plan for what intersection improvements or roadway improvements are still valid and put them in the official map too. So the sky's the limit with this.
Anything on there that folks want to see up here for actions, or like Greg is listing things you can put in there? All right. If I'm not hearing anything, I'm going to move us to who leads. I mean, just in terms of process, the official map updates come out of what the comprehensive plan is recommending. So when South
That's Planning
Whitehall,
Commission.
yeah, so the planning commission.
Yep.
All right, so we have the lead, planning commission. Any idea for partners? Who are some of the key partners?
The public,
Mm-hmm.
to get the consensus. And I think that's very important for this, to have input.
Yeah. And especially understanding the parameters of what it means to see maybe a property next to you on the official map or something like that as well, or easements.
Yeah, I would say any township department.
Great.
Or a partner.
Yep, as
Sorry,
a
can
partner.
you repeat that? Oh, any township department. Yep.
Yep.
And when it comes to funding, is this a budget item, most likely?
Yes.
And
I mean,
where
there may
we
be
think,
there may be
sorry.
grants as well.
Say that again, Greg.
There may be grants as well.
And what would be the timeline on this implementation?
Near term.
Yeah.
Sense. I think the official map from 2009 plan came out in 2010, so
Yep, that was the first thing we did.
works very quickly. And how will this be measured as being successful?
I think achieving our goals.
Achieving our goal. I think that's good. Any other thoughts on measures of success or any other aspects of the official map update? So folks, we've arrived at 6:45, which is our official closing time of this meeting. And I know there's at least some folks on here who are committed to going to the 7 p.m. Board of Commissioners. So I, first off, really just want to thank you for your continued participation in this working group. It has been invaluable to get these insights and this input. And the next step will be on August 19th, the normal Planning Commission meeting will have a space for about a 45-minute report out on the working groups and the recommendations that came out of each working group. So we invite all working group members to attend this meeting. It will be in person with a streaming option. If anyone from this group would like to be the transportation spokesperson and speak to what recommendations we discussed, you can raise your hand here or send me a note. But we would really love to have the participation of the working group members. I know we have some overlap with Planning Commission members who will obviously be hearing some of this report out, but I think seeing how it all comes together and seeing what all 5 working groups have come up with, and I think there's a lot of alignment and a lot of leverage points. So it's I hope you've enjoyed this process. And again, just thank you so much for your time. So I do want to respect our end of meeting time, but if there are any questions or any thoughts folks want to share, please feel free. I'll stick around for a little bit just to make sure. If you do want to discuss anything, I'll be here, and then we obviously will be sending out. Yes, Greg.
Anna, don't forget that if you have more comments, if you think of something late tonight, go to our Google Forms and add them in, please.
Okay.
And that is at South Whitehall. Sorry. Can't type and talk, but we'll make sure that you have the link to the Google form, and we will obviously be including all 12 of these recommendations in the report out, so you understand where we're at. So again, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your participation, your thoughts, and your expertise. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Greg, I know you have to run. So
Me too.
yeah, no, I know you.
13 minutes.
Thank you guys so much. Chris, was there something you wanted to touch base on, or do you want to just talk about it?
No, I don't think so. I think we're good. I think I got everything, or Rob helped out too, so.
Yeah, I
Thanks,
know we were
Rob.
writing a
Yeah.
lot of the same
Yeah.
things, you know.
All right. It was a race, yeah.